Welcome back to Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Thank you so much for joining us. Our guest is Bob Hill. Mr. Hill is the Executive Director of the Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo County. Thank you so much for joining us. What a lucky man, one of the most beautiful counties in the state, and you get to conserve the land in this region.
Well, it's truly a dream job, Brad, and thank you very much for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure. So let's talk about some of the successes of the Conservancy. We'll go back to 1984. I mean, for many years, your group has been protecting lands in this region. Tell us about that.
Well, I appreciate the question. We are the only local land trust working exclusively in San Luis Obispo County.
What does land trust mean?
A land trust is a conservation organization whose mission and purpose is to protect and preserve land for agricultural purposes, scenic open space, habitat, those kinds of purposes, and that's why our organization is incorporated.
And how do you do that?
We do that through voluntary measures, collaborative measures, and the classic thing is if you want to protect a piece of land, you go out and buy it, Brad.
So that is right. That will be it.
And that can be expensive, and so we don't always buy land outright. In fact, that's not our preferred tool. Rather, oftentimes we're dealing with conservation agreements where we're buying limited rights to ensure that the property is protected for conservation, agriculture, these kinds of things.
And is that, are you entering into agreements with private entities, with governmental agencies, both?
Yeah, both. And oftentimes you're working collaboratively and in partnership with a private landowner, but you're using funding from a governmental agency, and so you're having to have a partnership where everybody's working together. But what I like the most about it is that in the end, if you haven't created a win-win solution where everybody's happy, you haven't done it right.
Now, over the last 25 years, let's say, you have permanently protected over 12,000 acres in this county, which may be very gratifying. I wanted to ask you, though, on the flip side, there's a big movement towards protecting property rights. And so there can be a tension between property rights versus desire for conservation. How do you meet that challenge?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think it's one of the fundamental questions we need to answer. I think that importantly, we only work with willing landowners, and it's always voluntary. So I can't think of a better use and exercise of property rights than for a landowner to voluntarily want to enter into an agreement for compensation or for an incentive.
Let's talk about some exciting accomplishments from last year. In the city of San Luis Obispo, you partnered with that municipality for Froome Ranch. Tell us all about that. Well,
it's part of a long-standing relationship and partnership we've had with the city to implement the city's Greenbelt Protection Program. San Luis Obispo, this is outstanding. We're one of only a few cities and areas in the whole country that have really robust functioning greenbelt programs, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're one of the happiest places.
Well, I was going to say, Oprah recently said it was the happiest city in the entire country.
That's right.
And National Geographic had an article in 2008 about that.
You got it, and I agree, and I think that the quality of life aspects, the scenic open space, the clean air, clean water, access to trails and nature right next to town, it has a lot to do with that.
You mentioned you also work with private entities, and one example last year was the Alamo Creek Ranch.
Yeah, well, that was a really nice opportunity for us to work with private landowners in partnership to protect agriculture and keep a property in production and viable and sustainable in agriculture into the future, and to protect a large chunk of acreage, over 2,000 acres.
Now, I know we found you because one of my colleagues went on a hike
with
the Land Conservancy.
That's right.
So if we want to take a hike with your organization or get involved, how can we?
Well, that's a great question. We oftentimes are out there getting to know the community, leading hikes, working out on the creeks, and I would encourage folks to check out our website. That's www.lcslo.org.
Bob, thanks for joining us, and thank you for protecting San Luis Obispo County. We appreciate it.
I'm very glad to
do
it.
He's Bob Hill. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Back to HLN.
I want to reach out to you, the people of Japan from the other side of the world.
You are in my thoughts, in my prayers, in the thoughts and prayers of people everywhere.
As you rebuild your lives after the tragic events of March 11th, know that we are with you.
And the international community is ready to help. 오웬 스테이마스.